Hello and welcome to this introduction on a workshop called A Trauma-Informed Approach to Working with Subpersonalities, and we are going to be particularly focusing on subpersonalities within the Psychosynthesis framework and looking at those parts through a trauma-informed lens. Before we get into the nitty-gritty of the workshop, you might like to know a little bit more about me. My name is Dolma Beresford and I'm a psychotherapist and couples counsellor, and I work in private practice in London, and I also work in training and facilitating workshops such as this, and I'm very happy to be here and to be telling you a little bit more about this workshop. So what are we going to be learning in this workshop? Well, first of all, Psychosynthesis, for those of you who are familiar with this model, has two lines of growth. It's a transpersonal model, and we have a transpersonal line of growth, and we also have a personal line of growth. And as a psychotherapist, I'm particularly interested in the personal line of growth. So this workshop is really going to be focusing on that developmental line. I'm really going to want to set the context for this training by looking at psychosynthesis and, in a way, reclaiming its influence on the modalities that we see today. Psychosynthesis is a mindfulness-based model. It's also a parts-based model, and we work with the self. And as we know, there are many other modalities that now work with parts, that work with a wise adult, that work with the self. And it's really wanting to reclaim psychosynthesis contribution to therapy and to trauma. So we're really going to be looking at that and its influence. So again, as I'm going to be setting some context, we're going to be looking at this idea of multiplicity, the idea of the psyche being fragmented or having multiple parts. And we're going to look back in history and work out and discover how multiplicity became incorporated in therapy, and we're going to look at where psychosynthesis fits within that development. And I have to say it fits in rather early. So we're going to be interested in that kind of context, multiplicity, and then we're going to look into, again, as I said, setting context, we're going to be looking at how trauma developed, the ideas of trauma, how trauma developed over time, and also how therapy developed alongside our understanding of trauma and bringing it right up to the present day. So we're going to kind of set some context for the workshop. And then we're going to look at trauma. We're going to take a deeper dive into it. We're going to really understand how it's defined by other theorists, and just kind of get a little bit more, obviously many of you may already have a lot of trauma training in your backgrounds, but we're just going to kind of refresh that in our own minds. And so then we are going to look at how trauma affects the brain, and we're going to look at the neurobiological foundation of trauma responses, and we're going to look into those mammalian defenses that we have as part of just our history and heritage of being human beings, and the capacity that when we are faced with traumatic experiences, we respond automatically through our survival needs, and that is through fight, flight. We've also got freeze, we have submit, which is also known as fawn, as fix, as please and appease, and we're also going to look at the little attach, needy response as well. So we're going to look at those 5 traditional responses. We're also going to look at collapse as also a response that we have to trauma. So we're going to map those out and really look at the qualities that each of these survival strategies has, because we're wanting to see how trauma impacts our survival personality, that we have parts of us that develop in relation to trauma. And psychosynthesis, we think about that as being our survival personality. So we're really wanting to look at how our survival personality is made up, and the fact that it is made up of these subparts. And understanding this as clinicians really helps us to have a very nuanced approach to working with clients that have a stronger trauma history. So then we're going to look at how we're going to update the egg diagram, which is the traditional psychosynthesis model, and how subpersonalities really fit within that model. And we're also going to look at how to work with these parts of us that make up the survival personality, and we will do that in terms of getting together and working in groups. We're going to be looking at our own survival strategies, our own parts, so that we get a very embodied sense of what it is to do the work, which hopefully will then give us some real skills and strength when we take this work to working with clients. And so the idea is that we're going to be speaking about psychoeducation. How do we bring psychoeducation around trauma and these survival strategies to our clients, which hopefully helps with reframing certain characteristics that these parts have, de-shaming these parts, and how we also help clients to really recognise each part individually, get to know their parts, befriend their parts, welcome those parts in, and then how do we move into spaces where we are not so identified with the parts, and that we can unblend, we can disidentify and start to have a more authentic experience of our own self, and start to work towards bringing these parts together in wholeness. So I hope this is a very interesting and educational and inspiring workshop, and I really look forward to sharing more of it with you.